Hey, podcast listening people, welcome into another, of course, exciting episode of the B2B Mentors podcast. I have a real treat for you today. I have a guest, of course, and we're going to dive in and provide you with free, by the way, this is free to you, insights, strategy, tools, tips, and tricks from real practitioners, B2B marketing experts, influencers, and what I would consider business celebrities. And I have my friend Denmark Francisco just right across the bay, the original Francisco kid, literally across the bay from me over here in Tampa. And first off, welcome, man. Good to see you. Thanks for agreeing to be on the show. You've been involved in 4 major acquisitions of technology startups, created over 837 million in total value generated. Been 14 years of growth experience, including ex-CMO of Know-Before and growth hacking at DigitalOcean. So welcome to your big reveal on the B2B Mentors podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the welcome. Those are very kind words, man.
Absolutely. Just for you, man. And give a little bit of insight background. You know, you're immigrant, you came here, create a lot of success. Talk about that at a high level so people get a little vibe of where Denmark is coming from. And it's not Denmark, by the way, in case you guys were wondering.
It's all good. I was born and raised in Manila, Philippines. I moved here when I was 9 years old, immigrant. My mom was a nurse. So obviously for those that have Filipino friends, we know that the Filipino community are heavily involved in medical fields. So that's how I came through with my brother, my sister, and my dad. Really grew up from nothing. Grew up in a small town called Avon Park, Florida, which is in the middle of the state. Most people don't know what that is, but they do know the town next to us called Sebring, Florida, which is where there's 12 hours of Sebring car race that happens every single year, and it's pretty international. So that's what it was, the nearest thing. But anyways, fast forward, years down the path, went to school in UCF for my finance and accounting degree, started my career in New York City for PwC as an intern and did internship there twice. Quickly found out I wasn't really wanting to be an accountant and filling out tax forms and wearing suits and shaving my face every day. And then I cut my teeth into consulting with Deloitte, which was still tax consulting, unfortunately. And I really just didn't like shaving my face or wearing a 3-piece suit to work every single day. So anyways, left that career altogether.
And dude, guys like you and me, like we can't shave our face.
Yeah.
The baby face is just, people won't take us seriously.
Yeah, it literally gets red after 3 days. But I left that career altogether. I started doing what you would call pay-per-click advertising, lead generation kind of stuff in 2008. And did fairly well with that, turning my old annual income at Deloitte into a monthly income. I think I was like 25 at that time.
Was this like a side hustle? Was this for
a
company?
It was for me. I was like a one-man job, one-man team, right? I was in my apartment in New York. I didn't know how to actually like manage my own finances, which is like, it's interesting, right? Like in school, they teach you how to manage other people's money and how to be a good employee, but they never really taught me how to like manage my own finances. So obviously spent all of that. I was in New York. I mean, you make that, you spend it. Then got involved into consulting at ad agencies like the following year. I started building, what's now partly known as multi-touch attribution modeling, right, for ad agencies. So, and big data, I guess what you would call big data is essentially looking at like what people are searching for, how are you spending the money of your clients, right? So we were working on a company. I don't know if I can talk about this, but I think I can. We were building the Facebook following of a company called Red Lobster, right? Which obviously has sold. It's a Darden restaurant. We went from like 100,000 plus followers to like over like 900,000 within months. And I did that with another person. He actually now works for AWS AI or something. I mean, he was brilliant, Chris Brown. And we had a lot of fun there. So I picked up a lot of like agency, experience. And along the way, I started realizing that, I was really experiencing life at a different level where, I was told one thing in school and then I would experience it differently or something of similarity. And I would like either like it or don't like it. And then I would just learn as much as I can. And it's there was a writer, I think, that said it was like a cross-pollination of like abilities and skills in the workplace and in different industries. So anyways, today, I'm mostly involved in tech startups, heavily into cyber now. And I think we've had really good successes, and the value and the financial success for these organizations are just the scoreboard. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and then talk a little bit high level what it is you do now, and obviously you're pretty humble in terms of what you've accomplished so far. So we'll dive further into it, but talk a little bit about Blackbox and kind of your main focus nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 business models as an individual, on top of other businesses that I'm doing. But specifically in this realm, I have an advisorship, consultantship, and then obviously as a fractional leader or a full-time leader, depending on what the current needs of the organization is. So from an advisor perspective, I advise technology organizations, startups mainly, on not only what they can do, but what they shouldn't be doing, right? So as the old saying goes, time is money. So knowing what not to do is as important as knowing what to do. And so I provide that advisorships for a number of organizations now. And then as a consultant, I actually go and do the work myself with the team, right? So whether that's building the group, working with the internal team, or figuring out their go-to-market strategies, their execution, their branding, their PR, their analyst relationships with Gartner or Forrester, and how to actually properly position the organization for present and future growth, is something that I've been doing for about 14 years now. So it's all these experiences are compiling into this present time, right? And then as a fractional leader, I guess you could call it a fractional leader, I do go in full time. I don't really know what 40-hour work weeks are when I'm working full time, just truthfully. But I come in as the actual CMO of the organization. If they have an existing team, we go and optimize that team and then build, or if they don't have a team, I build from the scratch. And then when it's time to exit, I exit.
I love that philosophy that you touched on there. And I've even launched some talks on this that are around, not like everyone's looking for the silver bullet, right? But there's never a silver bullet to creating success. It's like, I can't remember I heard this, but it's always the golden BBs, never the silver bullet. So it's not like what you can add, hey, the most innovative tech and this and that and that. You're just trying to look for a silver bullet, but more so like, what can you stop doing and what can you eliminate that'll simplify, because there's a formula to it, right? Whether it's 20 years ago or today, there's a formula to developing and creating success. And I want to know from you, and what is it from immigrant coming here with nothing to, recognize successful, doing almost $1 billion in creating revenue and profits. What is it that is that differentiator for you? What has been that key, that ticket that whether it's a work set or activity that you've participated in that's allowed you to create such success in your life?
I think it's being practical, right? I think there's some managerial philosophy or just life philosophy, right? And I firmly believe that the acid test of life, at least, is does it work or does it not work, right? Like when you have no financial success, like you're just looking for a way to pay the bills, and you're trying to take every job as you can. I mean, I've been working since I was 11. So I've been a janitor at school. I've been a dishwasher at the local hospital cafeteria. Like I've been a server in college. Like, I've promoted, nightclubs in college for like a year, like anything to pay the bill. So like early on in age, like I couldn't really be picky, right? Like I just had to take what was there. And the only thing that was real was like, did it work? Did I get paid? Right. And I think I've taken that philosophy on. And obviously the title of the talk is Think Like a CFO, Act Like a CRO, and Talk Like a CMO. Right. And we can break those three things down, because if you're thinking like a CFO, you're now thinking from a profitability perspective, right? How profitable is your endeavor? Right. Like, and I think that's number one. Obviously,
let me pause you. Let me just pause you really quick. Let me pause you really quick on that. But before we really break those down and go into depth on it, in your mind, like when we started talking about this, who does this apply for? This concept of think like a CFO, act like a CRO, talk like a CMO.
I think it applies for not only like marketing professionals, but I think it applies for like the executive team, or actually just like co-founders, right? Like this is applicable to really anyone doing business. Like, and I think that there's too many separation that occurs in the workplace. Like there's too much like individual thinking, like, oh, what that person does doesn't matter or doesn't affect me. But in reality, you're a team, you're one unit. You have to know what each other is doing. And the more communication or the more understanding there is in the workplace, or at least in the project or whatever the case that you're working on, I think the more magic you can create. And magic to me is like when you start getting to see a hyper growth or a hockey stick or a steady growth, right? So that's also to me magical, because I think that's when you know it's working. It's like, oh, what we're doing and what our thesis is actually the customers like it, and they're paying us for this software or this product, right? So, and mind you, it takes the same amount of energy for me to actually market and sell a $25,000 annual like subscription to a software program as it does to sell a $27 golf towel, right? Like it's the same amount of energy. And by the way, I do have a golf business on the side on Amazon, Smiley Golf, premium golf accessories. So there's my plug. But like the same amount of research that I've done, the branding, it's actually like it is of similar effort. And I've always said this in my professional life, I've stuck to the B2B side of the equation because I quickly realized that the profits and the results are much faster and greater, and you can scale. And also from a multiplier perspective in the B2B space, in the business to consumer space. Now, I love B2C, but as a marketer, I wanted to find a way, a niche that I really enjoy, and software is that thing for me. So there you go.
So talk about acting like a CRO. We talked about CFO. What does it mean to act like a CRO in that scenario?
You got to sell. I mean, you gotta sell. I mean, at the end of the day, specifically now, I don't know when you're airing this, but like we're in a times where profitability is the topic in organizations, right? Like how do we stay afloat for the next 18 to 24 months while we go through these macroeconomic conditions, and specifically in the United States, and maybe it is global, but specifically in the US, there's, you know, there, how do I say this politically correct? I don't know if I will be, but you know, there is something going on that is essentially putting this idea of fear of organizations, individuals having to hang on to their cash, right? And when there is this like this made up fear in the marketplace, there's contraction happening, right? And so right now, more than anything, you have to act like a CRO. You have to know if the actions are going to lead to like profitability or a closed sale, rather than just like testing things out, right? And right now, like individuals and groups and teams have to act in a way where they have to fall back on things they know work, right? You can't really do things that are untried, right? And this is another philosophy, like managerial philosophy that I've taken on, is like, why do things you've never tried, right? As an individual and as a team. Now, you know, go back to the things that are working or did work, put those things back into play. Now, if there's an idea, we'll hire somebody that's done it firsthand, right? Not this idea or thesis and think. Just like,
why is this? Is it shiny object syndrome? Is it trying to chase too many, bird in the hand is better than two in the bush type of scenario? And the philosophy is also like where there's smoke, there's fire. So I agree with you. There's a lot of marketers, they have something that's kind of working, but they're trying to spread out to all these things because the philosophers and, like theorists are like, you got to be on every platform posting 1,000 times a day, doing this and this and this. And you're not even creating success or like replicating or scaling where you do have some mini wins happening.
Right. I think it's lack of information, right? Lack of data, lack of market research. They'll read a blog from someone or read something or listen to someone, and they themselves have actually not done the work, or they have not seen the raw data, right? So number one is information, and at least questioning where that information came from, right? Anyone can spit out a percentage off of a survey, but you're like, well, who did you survey? Does that matter to what I'm doing? So number one, lack of information. I think more importantly than anything, when I start pulling the string and asking very stupid, simple questions like, how did you draw to that conclusion? What information did you use? right? I think those are very, very basic questions that number one should never be defended. If you have the right teammate, they should talk about that openly, and also being able to say, hey, listen, I don't know, right? So lack of market research, right? Number two, lack of actual like firsthand experience, right? So I think that there's a lot of like, obviously because of the free flow of internet, obviously you're doing a podcast, right? There's a number of like individuals that you can ask that's done it firsthand. And to me, that was like early on when I had mentors in my career and in life, and I still do. That was one thing that they one person instilled in me is like, why would you listen to somebody that doesn't have the results in that specific topic about that topic? Like, and that completely like just changed the way I view my relationships. Like, I'm going to go to somebody who has an awesome marriage about relationships. Like, but if they don't quite have the financial success, I'm not necessarily going to be asking financial advice from that individual. Right now, the other flip side of that is, one person may have all the finances in the world, terrible marriage, right? So it's just differentiating who to actually heed advice from. And then obviously with teams right now, if we're talking about like in present time, we're recording this on June 9th, 2023, you have to have team members that can execute and that's executed that playbook before, right? Like we're talking about people who can do. Like you don't need people to like argue it out. Now, if there's an ideation like at the exec level, like that is like so important. So there is a bit of a, I guess a non-optimal alignment is what I'm going to call it, like where folks are not aligning clearly with their executive team. And it's really, if you think about like corporate planning, it's really broken down in 3 levels, right? You have your corporate objective, right? That's like in alignment with the board. Then you have your strategies as an executive and what each person's going to be doing. And then you have the tactical portion, right? And this idea of like getting spread thin, I think, which is what your question is, like, there's a lot of like tactical things that are happening. There's like busy things like, let's do this, let's do that. But the question is the tactical portion aligned to the strategy that's aligned to the corporate objective? And if you really think about that, there is one thing that I know works every single time, which is more communication with your team, not less. Over communicate, not under communicate, right? Like if there's a team member that doesn't know why we're doing what we're doing, it's actually the job of that senior or that executive to clarify that. And there's no perfect, I've never been in an organization that had the perfect communication that everybody knew why everybody was doing everything. I mean, maybe there was one that was closed, but there's no absolute. I mean, absolutes are like impossible. There's no most perfect or the perfect organ. No, it's like, it's just like life, right? Like how many of us have family drama, like relationship drama? I mean, there you go. Life seeps into our workflow. So I think it's just aligning and taking the time to really like ask each other, like, hey, this is what I mean when I said this. Here's the plan. What are your thoughts? And giving importances to those individuals in the team, right? Like giving them the time and the space to at least like share their viewpoints, right? Obviously, the question of have you done this before has to be asked.
Assuming like, you've staffed them correctly in the first place.
Sure. I mean, I think technology is like, it's I mean, the tool sets and the platforms, I mean, there's I think I turn around and like there's platform after platform. I mean, in the last 14 years, I mean, you can speed process. I mean, you can literally hire somebody out of college like that didn't even finish college and do digital marketing work of like somebody who's done 4 years if they had the proper guidance, right? And that's where I think that's where like the magic happens in the workplace right now is like when you have an individual who's hungry and wants to do it. Like I have this in some teams that I help manage and advise. Like they're hungry. They just need to know what to do and why they're doing it. And they do it faster than some of the past team members have had. Right. But there has to always be aligned to a strategy and a corporate objective, and then communicating what's going on a continual basis with the exec team. Right. Because this idea that like marketing is the silver bullet, like, oh, we need marketing and we need leads and we need sales now. It's like, okay, so first off, what time frame are we looking? What's the actual target? Right? Is there enough pipeline in place? And like every client and every team I've ever worked for, every CEO I've ever worked for has asked like, hey, we want more revenue. I'm like, well, we'll take a fucking ticket. Everybody
More
wants
leads,
more
more
money.
leads, more leads, more money.
Yeah, more leads. Yeah, but it's all revenue, right? So like I said, act like a CRO. Like if you're a marketer, you have to act like a CRO. You have to think you can give them 100 leads and none of them closes ever.
Mm-hmm.
Versus you can give them 50 great leads and 10 of them closes. Trust me, the CRO is only looking at close one revenue.
It goes back to something you've really emphasized, and you have this personality trait too, is like really knowing your numbers, not just theoretically assuming, okay, we do this, it may occur in this, but knowing your numbers, a time horizon. As a CMO, as a marketer, surprising, so many of them are still completely removed in that suite from even like, you ask them, what's your average value of a new client? What's the sales cycle? And they're like, oh, Reggie? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there's a couple of reasons why that happened, right? Like you have to have revenue operations depending on how large your team is, right? It could be you and your digital marketer, or you're like, if you have a rev ops person on the sales side, right? Like you have to know your numbers that everyone agrees to. And this is the other thing, like the idea that like numbers that the CRO provides and the numbers that the CMO provide doesn't match. Okay, fine. But like, what's the disparity? Like if it's like a 10% disparity, okay. If it's a 20% disparity, all right. Like how large are these numbers, right? Like first off, 20%, $20 to 100 versus 20 million to 100 million. Those are obviously there's scale there, but like you have to find a point of agreement, right? And the data team or the RevOps team, which I think they should have both, and there you can do that. There should be a meeting ground in numbers, right? Because if one team member doubts it, like if the CRO doubts what I'm doing as a CMO, it's not going to work. We have to take a step back and say, where are we missing information? And it's never personal. This is the thing that I tell people in the workplace is like, you have to ask the stupid, simple questions. Like if your team doesn't allow that, or that's looked down upon to question, it's probably not the right team, right? Like you have to be able to share your viewpoint and ask. And if you feel that like, oh, I might get fired for this, like, dude, you're not in the right place. May not be the right client, right? If you're a fractional person, right? And the point I'm saying is that like communication is the answer. It's never personal. It's business. It's like, hey, how long did it take for us to close a $50,000 account versus how long did it take for us to close an $18,000 account? And how did we get there? And out of that, like conversation, right, you actually derive like successful actions of an organization, because I think there's for me, there's a knowledge bank for every single team. It's never the same. Like you're coming together as a group from different backgrounds, different experiences, different losses, right? And like you want to pick the best team members as possible. And really there's three areas. The CEO of Airbnb talked about it in his masterclass recently. For those that like masterclasses, Brian Chesky, he talked about where he spends his time, which is product marketing and hiring, right? Like, and that to me was a brilliant masterclass. And I was like, yeah, that's what matters, because at the end of the day, one opinion matters, and that is of the customer. The customer's opinion matters.
Google follows that same philosophy too, is the CEO spends most of their time on the hiring side of things. And I also read a book recently, the CEO does three things, right? And in that case is like, it is the most important, because that will break your customers, that will break your marketing, that will break your sales, or it will make it. I want to pivot here real quick, because I know we're short on time, is and this is relevant given the current ecosystem we're in, where, apparently we were to find what a recession is. We're not in a recession, or haven't had a recession, or it's not coming ever. It's just, it's made up, it's fake, but the companies feel it, they understand it. There's been obviously a slowdown in this end of Q1, Q2 cycle. And so you mentioned, and you reposted something to LinkedIn about cutting marketing budget. And that is the first thing to go when there is a slowdown, is executives cutting marketing budget.
Yep.
CFO, CRO, they're cutting marketing budget. What is your message for those who that's like the first thing they're going to go, but they're trying to create significant enterprise value?
Yeah. I mean, I think I posted that like 9 months ago, right? I think that's when I like
think it was
originally
11 months ago, and then you
11 months
reposted
ago.
it just as
Last
relevant,
night.
if not more relevant.
Yeah.
Last night. Yeah. At 2
Yeah, I mean,
a.m. when you're trying to find out that other post that had
yeah,
the title.
I'm up all night. I love research. So,
Mhm.
you know, I think 11 months ago, about a year ago, there's certain like economical like KPIs that were talked about, right? Like, again, they're depending on what your definition of a recession is, there is a recession going on if you just look at it from an economical business sense, right? Obviously, with interest rates being changed and hiked up, right? Obviously, home prices and all these things, like there is inflation that's constantly going on, right? Like the dollar last year isn't the same value right now. I mean, that's standard
Obvious.
economics, right?
Yeah.
So, but what's going on is in organizations is when this occurs, they think they have to go on a cost saving spree, and there's always two departments that I've seen in my career. There may be others that have different experiences, but my experience, they always cut two things: finance and accounting, right? And then they cut the overhead or spending in marketing, which is probably the two most deadliest like things you can do in a time where there's like market contraction, right? Like let's just call it contraction versus expansion instead of all these economic things that I'm sure I'm gonna get tweets or messages about the language I use. But there's a market contraction that is occurring, right? So folks are hanging on to their dollars a little bit tighter. But the thing that most people don't think about is it's not like there's less money in the bank accounts of individuals and businesses, right? Like unless you misspent it, that's a different story. But like there is still money in the bank. Now, when you're contracting, right, you really want to be able to look at like what your needs versus what your wants are. And so if you have a product offering or a platform that is needed and wanted, then you can go out and win in the marketplace. And you need the marketing to be the front runner to sales, right? This is why marketing is senior to sales. Like if the salesperson goes to a prospective client and they've never heard of the organization before, there's a bit of a selling, right? This grinding, like versus you send out the marketing first to that target account, and then the salesperson comes in, is able to then have a more smoother conversation about that offering. Obviously, hopefully you did your market research and you know all the preliminary things that you need to do, and have an ongoing campaign to that ICP or to that type of individual, right? So the point that I'm saying is like, yeah, don't cut out your marketing in times of recession. If anything, you should probably go 2x, 3x, but you have to do the research ahead of time before you spend the money on campaigns. Like, who are we going after? And there's a framework that I operate from. If I can share this quickly for those listening, take a look at where you've won before. Like my advice for marketers right now is like, and there is a startup idea behind this. I'm putting it together. It's been an idea for 15 years, but just look at the modeling of like, let's take, if you have 100 paying customers, right? Actually go and look at that 100 paying customers and see where the revenues are coming from, and do an ad hoc analysis of what type of organizations you're winning in. And I bet you there's some sort of like 80-20 split or 60-40 split where, 20% of your customers is generating 80% of your recurring revenue. And it could be 75-25, 60-40, but there's going to be an insight. And when you take that insight right now, it's important for individuals and groups and teams to double down in places that they have succeeded and are succeeding in, and then say no to the other shit, right? Like just say, hey, we're not going to go after that industry or that ICP or that size organization or that size of revenue, right? Like actually hone it down and be very, very like sharp focus on places that you have won. And to me, that's the organizations that are winning. Those are the team members that are winning. And when you do it based on information that you know versus information that you don't know or don't have, there's a bit more predictability, which is really the name of the game, is how do you create some level of predictability?
Just letting that breathe for a minute. Hopefully you guys are like absorbing what we're actually, what Denmark's sharing here. It's really powerful, and through actually have done it in the past, and on a micro level, from like a marketing budget to a macro level to high level investors, extremely wealthy people is like the philosophy of, you know, be fearful when others are being fearsome and be fearsome when the rest are fearful. And
Yeah.
so when everyone starts to contract, that's where you can really go in and take up market share. Your
Yeah.
competitors are cutting stuff. They're doing less content. They're doing less marketing. They're doing less on ads. Well, shit, that means you have a huge opportunity to be able to acquire. It may not net in quick, immediate, but net in the long run, you're going to be the brand that comes out on top.
That's right.
So just reemphasizing how powerful that is. And dude, we'll have to do a part 2 on this because unfortunately I got to hop on a call here soon. So
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for you coming in, you know, sharing some of your insights. Promise me we'll do a part 2 at some point in time because there's a
Absolutely.
whole lot that we didn't dive into, and you're just a wealth of information. So again, I can't thank you enough. You know, for those that are listening and maybe want to contribute, they have connections, you never know. Is there anything on your end, relationships, connections, vendors, companies, clients, that's top of mind for you that people can connect you up with?
I'm always looking for organizations to have a working product. I think as we go through this next 18 to 24 months, I think organizations and brands that have a working product, specifically in the B2B platform space, are the ones that's going to get on top, right? So, you know, investors are obviously looking. I mean, it's not like investors are not investing, right? But investors need to know what working products and which ones are, you know, which winners are they going to pick. So, I mean, yeah, anything of that nature. I'm open to any type of communication. I'm very easy to get a hold of anyway on LinkedIn or, on Twitter or whatever. But like on LinkedIn, especially, I'm pretty fast flow. So, yeah, feel free to reach out about anything and we'll go from there.
Yeah, provide some social currency. Go like Denmark's post, go connect with him, follow him, check out blackboxconsulting.io. And then anywhere else that you prefer people to find you, follow you, get into contact with you.
No, just LinkedIn. I mean, from a business perspective, you know, LinkedIn is just my go-to.
Beautiful. Thank you, my friend.
Awesome.
Can't thank
You're
you
welcome,
enough.
man.
We'll grab some cigars here and then we'll have to coordinate part 2. And then
Cool.
everyone listening, thank you so much. Don't hop just yet so we can wrap up the recording. The rest of you, make sure you subscribe, you're following. Lots of powerful guests. This is free to you, but provide a little social currency. Share this with your friends. If not only for you, I guarantee you there's someone who's going to get great value out of these discussions.